Hi, everyone. I have a special guest here today with a really, really important message for our Baharian community. As everyone knows, we have been plagued with the drug epidemic, and unfortunately, it has not gotten better. It has only gotten worse, and times have gotten a lot scarier around that topic. This special guest has come to us today anonymously, and they have gone through the hells of what drug addiction is like, but they have also been able to beautifully recover and stay recovered for years. And this guest wants to share their story. Now, it is going to be anonymous for this person's respect and for the respect of their families, and I'm hoping that this message comes across to you in that way that you can relate. Many people feel this stigmatized shame to speak about this, and this is why we want to bring it to light. So, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for reaching out and wanting to tell your story. So we're going to get right into it, and you can tell us as much as you want to tell us, and you can omit whatever it is that you want to omit, but hopefully we are going to stick to as much truths as possible. And please, whatever you want to talk about, you are safe to do so here, okay?
No problem.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you managed to really get to that place in the first place. Like, how old were you? What your environment was like? Tell me about what brought you here.
What brought me here is that I was really tired of seeing a lot of my friends die. Just as recently, the young guy that died, I knew him on a personal level. And I had a couple of sleepless nights, and I felt like this was my time to really expose or educate the public as best as I can about what to spot, or that there is hope, and that if I can get through it, maybe somebody else can, and hopefully touch somebody's life so we don't have to bury our brothers and sisters and children, cousins, and so on and so on. I really just want to just say that it doesn't always have to start with being traumatized or depressed.
Okay.
For me, for example, and for some people that I know who have passed, it all started as fun. To be socially accepted.
Is this like clubs? Is
Yeah,
this
yeah, this was all clubs, socially accepted, but not in an early age. That I want to, for my case, not in an early age. Because I believe that when you're 15, 16 years old, you drink a couple of beers with your friends, you smoke a little weed, and you kind of cut it off because you're like, all right, let's chill. I got to go home. My mom and dad might catch me. When you get a little older and you make your own money, you start to do your own thing, and you feel like you're an adult. So you're more susceptible to kind of fall into,
fall into trouble?
in trouble. And trouble is always is fun. Like, can I get away with it? Who's gonna know? Or this is okay. For me, for instance, an enemy didn't ruin my life. It was someone who I trusted.
So it was a friend, like they got you.
It was a family member.
It was a family member?
It was a family member. And I was in a club scene for a very long time, sober, very sober. And I even went as far as traveling. I went to Florida, I went to Vegas to follow some of these DJs, and you go from the dance floor to the VIP, and now you're like rubbing elbows with these people. And it's very, very socially accepted. And
very easy to fall
very,
into.
very easy, very easy.
So first it started recreationally for you. Was it like recreational at first?
No, I just went straight to, this is what it is, and mainly.
How many times did you take it before it became a consistent thing?
I want to say all it takes is once or twice. All it takes is just really once for you to like it.
Yeah.
If you like something, well, good luck. You're not going to unlike it. But it came to the point where you do it and you hate it. And you don't know how to get out of it. Because your brain is really screaming for all of that excitement and that dopamine and so on. I don't think I ever really met anyone who sat there and said, "Wow, that was amazing." It gets old quick, but it's once it touches your bones, your soul, your character, your way of thinking, your life, and how you go about it on a day-to-day basis. It's got a grip on you that you think you could shake and you can't. Some can, and I know that they can, but some just get deeper and deeper.
So just to give a little bit of education, just to segue into what you're saying, I want you to help our viewers understand that when you take a drug like this, what is the actual physiological reaction that happens? Your brain, right? It breaks down and releases dopamine, and it releases vast amounts of it, large amounts, where that is that euphoric feeling that comes in, and you're feeling great, you're feeling wonderful, you're dancing, you're with your friends. But however, the next morning there is a crash that follows, and this rings true, I'm sure, for many drugs. We don't have to name which drugs specifically if you don't want to.
No, I do. It's fine.
Okay, so what kind of drugs so that people
So
know?
I had a problem with coke.
Okay.
To counteract the down and depression and whatever else, and to fall asleep, you would have to take a Xanax.
Okay.
Those go to hand in hand. I've known people who took a half a Xanax and passed. I used to count and my blessings and say, like, let me wake up, let me be fine, which actually brings into the topic on what some people start to do. They have a really big night in clubs that they're taking uppers, ecstasy, Molly, coke, K, and then they come down or they come home and there is no Xanax. So there's Percocets or Oxycontins, and then in worst case scenario, heroin. And before you know it, that's how the heroin addiction kind of starts, in a sense. Or I've heard people where they go to the dentist, get their tooth pulled, and then they like it. And then they call the pharmacy and say, I lost my prescription. No problem. Here's 20 more. Here's 30 more. Yeah. And then, it's street value at the time was $5, $10, $30, $20. And then what took you $5 is now $200. And then what took you $200 is back to $5 in heroin. $5 turns into $10 and so on and so on. And at that point, you have a habit that you cannot control.
What was your lowest moment?
My lowest moment was when I didn't know how to stop, and I knew that I had to come clean to my family. It was my way of like, all right guys, it's either you help me out or this is probably going to take me. Mm-hmm. And being someone who's overcome so many things in my life, that I thought that this was like, I'm indestructible. And this is the one thing that like crumbled and crushed every fiber in my body. And I didn't know who to turn to or how. And I finally came out and told my family, but also what really made me stop is the birth of my child and my children. You see, if there was really a message for the public, that'd be that if you don't have a purpose in life, you need to find it. My purpose was my children.
What would be your message to somebody that does not have a purpose like that just yet? Maybe they don't have a child. Maybe they feel like they're not doing well in life. They don't know what they want to do with their lives. Maybe no career. Maybe their career is failing them. They're in the trenches, the deep, dark trenches of drug addiction, where everything seems like it's falling apart, most of which is at their own hands' fault, whether it's because their drug addiction took them there or because they were so depressed to begin with that they've lost everything along the way. What would be your message? In what way can they find their purpose?
Well, you better find a purpose. And you shouldn't be ashamed of telling someone, especially your family members, because they do care and they do love you. And they don't want to see you suffering or struggling as you do.
How did your parents take it? Like, how did your family react?
Not well.
Not well.
Of course not. It's a shame. It's shameful. It's
not well
what,
at first.
What
yeah.
parent wants to admit that their child failed or their parenting skills failed? It's very taboo, especially for our community.
It is.
It's very, no, not us.
Yeah.
It almost comes off arrogant or ignorant.
It is very arrogant. Our community is very arrogant in this, and it keeps happening, right?
It's a lack of education.
It's a lack of education, but what bothers me and why I wanted to do this interview is because we continuously see these overdoses. It's the hugest elephant in the room because 99% of the time it is completely hidden that it was an overdose, even though everybody in that audience.
Well, it's socially accepted.
It's
It's
actually
nonsense.
but it's actually like applaud, like, oh, have a shot, have a drink with your father.
So that's
Or-
another thing. So our own community glorifies the party life.
We come from nothing.
We come from nothing.
We come from nothing, and that's when we come here, and now we have everything, and it's as if like we forgot our roots.
But
Just
we
'cause-
did. Our values are completely mixed up. And I say
Absolutely.
our because I'm in the middle of this just like anyone else.
Addiction is not racist.
Yeah. It doesn't
It doesn't in any way, shape, or form. It is here and now in front of everyone, in every way, in every factor of life. You don't typically have to be addicted to drugs. You could be addicted to shopping. You could be addicted to everything. You know, coffee. It's there's addictions everywhere.
Everybody has their poison, they say. What would you, I want to understand, first thing is with your family. Are you happy that they reacted that way now looking back, or would you have wanted them to be more supportive? Like, do you feel you would have gotten clean if you didn't have that, feeling of disappointment attached to it? A lot of people watching right now, they might have this problem and they're terrified to come.
They're terrified because they know that it's, first of all, it's very shameful,
It is very shameful.
and you have to put your ego aside to take accountability of your wrongdoings, and I think that takes a very mature individual, and you're not mature in your early 20s. Again, you're more stupid in your 20s than you are at 16. 16, you're
I
like
agree.
cautious. Again, you might get caught by your parents. You live under their rules, under their roofs. But now, when you have your own money, that you
it's
you made your own efforts, and that you don't have to answer to anyone, it's different because, again, it's a conflict of interest within yourself. Right? I'm a grown man. I made my own money. I'm a grown woman. I made my own money. I went out. I could go out. I could do whatever.
Especially in our community because the parents are so strict and they kind of don't want you touching
Strict?
everything.
Experiencing
I think
everything.
strictness is what needs to happen more.
Well, you know what I mean when I say strict. Like the expectation is that, поздно не приходи, don't come home too late. Make sure you call your mom before you get there, this and that.
Oh, we all knew how to manipulate it.
Exactly. So we
We all
already
know.
all know the game. You know how to manipulate it. Now, let me ask you a question. I'm very curious.
Sure.
Was your family ever suspicious, or was this a full-blown, like,
Absolutely.
they were suspicious?
Absolutely.
So
Touch on that. What
You're
raised some
very-
of
You're very
suspicions.
clever when it comes down to at your, like you say, trenches, at your lowest.
You're
drug addicts are very manipulative.
Very
correct?
clever. Really, really, really clever. They know exactly what to say, how to hide it. For instance, if I was high-ish or a little whatever, I used to just blame it on like, oh, I'm just anxious, or I have anxiety, or I'm not feeling like myself. And when someone's not feeling themselves, you're like, all right, let me leave them alone. Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm left alone.
They don't want to see it, and,
Yeah.
you're kind of, getting away with it.
Yeah, your stomach hurts, you just lay there. Your head hurts, you just lay there. Leave him alone. He'll feel better soon. They'll check in. Here's some water. That's not what. But really, it's you got what you wanted. Just leave me alone.
What do you want to expose?
I want to expose that everything that you know about drugs is probably 5% of what what's really out there. The streets are ruthless. It's everywhere, especially now that they legalized marijuana, especially now that they're glorifying mushroom microdosing and this and that. It's a disaster.
Dangerous game.
It's very dangerous.
The fentanyl epidemic. Everything is laced.
See, when I was around, fentanyl wasn't
spoken
around,
about.
Yeah.
it wasn't spoken about. And again, I was in the club scene, so it was a different type of drug. It was a scene. It was like, it was a battle of Like, who could stay up the longest? Who could close out the party? Who could enjoy? Who could talk about what happened, what they felt, what they experienced? Or who went to, as far as at Atlantic City and then all the way to the Hamptons in the same day? You know, these are all glorified warrior stories. And how did you do it? And what helped you? And oh, I did this, and I was tripping, or I was high, I was this and that in the middle of the night, and so on and so on.
So what can we expose about this to prevent it from happening again? What can we have our people watch out for, or at least know in the back of their mind?
You, as a parent, especially with children, should not, or actually should, but shouldn't in a sense. It's contradicting. You shouldn't be their friend, right? You should. A friend tells you, "Yo, you're fucking up. I'm here to help you," and they'll sit you down, and I'm like, "I'm not going nowhere until you get help." If you need to go as far as drug testing your child, if you have suspicions of anything, you should do it. Don't hesitate. It's better to drug test your child than to shovel of dirt on them.
God forbid, yeah, 100%.
It's
So
so
drug
much
testing
better.
them if you're suspicious.
Drug testing them, your intuition, their friends, ask them where they're going, then ask them again in a different way. Wait a couple of days, ask them how was it, and see if their stories change. You have to be really, you have to understand.
You have to be like a detective.
Yeah, you really have to be a detective. The exposure is that it's next door.
Yeah.
It's right in front of you. It's your family member. It's your cousin. It's just it could be anybody. For me, it was my own family. My own family. Enemies don't ruin your life. It's your friends or your family member. It's the ones you trust, the ones that say, "This ain't nothing. This is bullshit. You'll be all right. I'll make sure you're all right." And then when you're not, nobody's around.
So unfortunately, and it's not just in our community, but unfortunately the truth lies that most people that get into drug addiction, they don't climb out. They either relapse many times or they just never even climb out. They never even try the recovery route. How did you get sober? What did you do? What do you feel that you needed, that you're glad that you did to get you where you are right now? Because many people think it's impossible.
Well, first of all, I blocked and disconnected myself from all social media. I stopped going out. I stayed with my family. I literally came home to my child at the time and my wife, who is currently my ex, and I think it was the result of that.
That's amazing for you to admit.
But just meditation helped me a lot. Just again, accepting the fact that you have an issue is the first step, and I didn't have to go to AA or NA or any of those. Like, if you read enough, you'll find, if you sit in silence long enough, you'll find your answer. And I sat in silence, and I read enough, and things clicked, and some things didn't. And I even went to therapy. I went to therapy. I didn't have insurance. I paid out of pocket. I mean, it came down to saving my own life. Yeah. Money was no issue to save your life. What is money and what is your life?
Did you stay in the same environment that you were
No,
in?
absolutely not. I, again, blocked everybody, disconnected from all social media. I don't drink. I quit smoking. I just completely disappeared. There's still people who will run into me years later and they're like, "Where the hell you been?" I even moved to another state with my family because I didn't want to be around it.
I think that's very powerful.
It is.
And I think being out of that environment finally gave you that second chance to
But
go.
that wasn't, that was just the beginning.
Of course, it's the beginning.
What happened after, which was the hardest part, it was the depression, the crippling anxiety that comes along with it. That is your body screaming, right? So people think that, oh, just heroin, you get dope sick or whatever it is. There's drugs out there, the uppers, the ecstasy, the cocaine, the K, and whatever else. You get massive anxiety, and your brain is screaming for the excitement, screaming for the dopamine. If you don't catch on to these little things, you won't really know, and it'll hit you like a bag of bricks. That's what it did to me. It was so bad at one point that I couldn't even hold my child for 4 months.
How long did it take you to get clean?
That day, when she was born, with the umbilical cord still bleeding in my hand wrapped, I'm covered in blood and all the fluids. I came up to the window, it was a rainy day and the sun broke, and I looked at my child and I said, just for you and me, because I also lost a father, and I didn't want my child to lose a father and have the, same feelings that I harbored. Just for you and me. I'll do this just for you and me. That purpose that I spoke about, I found that purpose, and it really helped. But again, I also got closer to God. I started praying every day. I started, speaking to God, as weird as it sounds, meditation. It was a ritual. I didn't do anything until I meditated for 10, 15 minutes. And eating healthy, taking vitamins. If you're having withdrawals, vitamins could help. B-complex helped me a lot. Fish oil, vitamin D, magnesium, everyday multivitamin, all helped me. It took me a year and a half, but it brought my levels kind of back. But again, it's every day.
It's an everyday battle.
It's an every day.
Do you still get cravings?
Not cravings, but you're reminded.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you feel when you're reminded?
You get very anxious.
Yeah.
None of that ever leaves you. I could watch a movie and
everything comes running back, of course.
I'll get chills.
Yeah.
I'll get flashbacks still.
How do you feel every time you see somebody else overdose again?
I wish I was there to put my hand on their shoulder and say, hey, listen, I'm right here. I did this by myself. You don't have to. But just know if you do, you can if you want to. If you really have to want to live.
Yeah.
You really...
I think you have to say that one more time for everyone's
You
listening.
really want
to... You have to want it.
You have to want to live.
You have to want it.
You really have to want to live. I'm sure that there's a lot of people who died that are not depressed. But if you ask them if they were here right now or had a chance to speak to them, they'd probably tell you, but what's there to live for?
Yeah.
It's shameful. It's very shameful. Our community is judgmental. It's very hard for people to get married if you don't have X amount of dollars or a certain type of lifestyle, or if there's any hints of drug abuse or family issues.
Or mental health problems.
We all have mental health
Exactly,
problems.
but our community doesn't really talk about that.
We all have traumas that we harbor, that we cope with. You see, that's now called mental health problems, right? It's just a coping mechanism that's called mental health. You shouldn't be ashamed of how you cope with stress. Some people cope with it oddly, weird, in their own quirky ways. That doesn't mean you're crazy. You're just digesting your stress, if I could be, quite candid about it.
Someone listening right now that is deep in the trenches, or they're, in the middle of this problem, don't really know how they got there, but they just don't know how to stop. What would be your complete message to them?
Come out to someone you trust. Come out. I didn't go to any meetings, but if that you think helps you, go.
I mean, you said you did therapy. You said you do meditation. You said you changed your diet.
On my own.
Yeah, on your own.
Again, this is my choices that I actually had to put one foot in front of the other.
So rehab can be powerful for
Rehab
people to get
can
better.
be powerful.
and it's great for people to hear that it is possible.
It is
And
possible.
it's very powerful that from your willpower, you were able to sustain how many years of sobriety?
It's going to be 9 years in March.
9 years. So did you ever relapse? Sorry if that's a personal
No.
question. You never relapsed.
No.
So for one and only time shot.
Yeah.
And I want to also,
I mean, if I relapse, I'm going to die.
yeah. And do you remind yourself of that?
Constantly.
That's exactly what keeps me alive. If I go back, I will die.
You will die.
How painful was it to get clean?
Since
It
you
was
didn't
Detox in
the
a,
hospital
most,
or in a rehab.
the most, but that's
and
the
you
thing.
didn't do Suboxone, you didn't
I
do
didn't do-
anything
no,
like that.
it
So
was
you
all
went
Cold
cold.
turkey.
Cold turkey.
What was that like?
The most
Necessary.
Necessarily painful thing.
mentally painful, agonizing, to the point where I had to like question my sanity. I used to sit there and call my family members and be like, "Am I okay? What's happening?
What is this? Yeah.
Why am help?" And they're like, "You're good. We're here. Come here. Come to my house. Stay here. We're here. We'll hold you in."
How long did that painful period last?
A year and a half the first time.
No, like the really painful, like
A year and a
acute.
half.
wow,
Year and a half.
trouble sleeping.
I used to sleep 3 hours a night and wake up.
That's
How
On a
bad
diet.
the drugs pretty much
Yes,
kept up all
3
your
hours. This
natural-
is sober.
Yeah.
See, that's why people relapse.
That's exactly because it's hard. Treatment
That's
is
why.
hard.
That's why. Because they can't deal with the mental aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's why they relapse. It numbs you. It kind of puts a Band-Aid on it. So it's kind of out of mind, out of sight. If I get high, I'll be all right.
Yeah.
I won't feel. I'll feel a different feeling, other than this. Just come out. You have to find the courage to come clean. Just go to somebody you trust, your brother, your sister, your father, your mother. Yeah, you're probably afraid they're probably going to get a heart attack or whatever the case may be. But it's a first step. And then there's no not coming out. The rabbit's out the hat.
What would you say to an addict that's listening right now, that's in complete denial and thinks that it's not going to happen to them?
It's already happened.
They're not going to overdose. They're careful.
They're going to overdose.
So that your message, you keep doing drugs and you die.
You will die.
You will die.
I
Promise you, you will die.
Yeah.
You might have 12, 15. You could be a career junkie. All it takes is that one time. All it takes is that one time. Again, I've had people who took a half a Xanax and died. I've had people who took 6 Xanax and survived.
It's a game.
it's-
Russian
It's-
roulette.
Yeah, it's
Especially
It's
today
a-
because
it's
of
a
fentanyl.
thrill. Some people have, again, different coping mechanisms. Mine was like, how far can I push my limits, and how much can I survive of it? But that was my game. See, there's different addictions, right? There's people who are addicted to the feeling. There's people who are addicted to the romance of the
process.
process of it, right? The needle, the vein, the spoon, of what I saw and heard. For me, it was the waiting, calling, crushing, rolling the dollar, snorting, drinking, smoking, and then all over again. It's a surreal feeling where it's very blurred between reality and not reality. You literally sit there and it does make you into like a schizo. You're walking the streets thinking like they know I'm high.
Yeah.
They could tell I'm high. And some people have no idea.
And it's just a wheel of basically chasing that high every single day.
It comes to the point where if you don't, you feel
Disgustingly sick. And
disgustingly sick.
Yeah.
And again, it triggers another thing. Drugs trigger an obsessive compulsive disorder in people. That's where it like
Kind
well,
of-
drug-induced psychosis in general.
it
is
is
very-
an OCD situation.
Yeah.
You start to obsess,
Yeah.
right? So there's people, for instance, they don't drink because it triggers like alcohol and this together,
the same receptors are getting affected.
right? I know people who smoke weed and then they don't smoke, but they have to have a Newport.
Yeah.
And again, that's just a ritual. It's really a ritual that you cannot break, and you enjoy it. See, that's that romance. Like, if I do this, I'm rewarded with this, and I know how this usually ends up. And your brain is a lot more powerful than you think.
Yeah.
A lot more powerful.
It's all the willpower.
Yeah,
Did you ever get caught?
close.
You got close, but you never actually got caught. Like nobody, like they kind of suspected, but not really. They didn't really know what was going on. How long would you say you were doing that?
Like
How long was your even trajectory from when you started doing it to when you decided you were going to stop?
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
And it got
progressively worse.
progressively worse.
Yeah, something as simple as like, one bag would typically last 2 parties. It would, towards the end, would be like a bag to go out before you get ready, and two at the party, and then one coming home, and then they say jonesing so badly, which is fiending so badly that you'll get up and call somebody and be like, yo, I'm coming through. For no reason. You just cannot stop.
How did this affect your relationships at the time?
Well, first of all, once you lose trust, it's over. So you lose trust not only within your partner, but within yourself. You can't even trust yourself around people, places, or things. And I think you also hear that in like AA, right? People, places, and things. Those are triggers. That's real. People, places, and things are real.
I think that's one of the biggest issues of why we have so many young people relapsing, because we have people that have gotten them into the rehab, but the second they come back to the neighborhood, they relapse that same week. Whether it's the dealer that they see on the
Leave.
street, they need to leave.
Leave permanently. Don't think you're good 5 years and come back and you're like, I'm good 5 years. No. So I hope we've all heard this one Instagram reel that goes around. Son comes up to his father who's quit drinking and says, Dad, how long are you going to be sober? And father says, 1 more day. It's true. It's 1 day at a time. It's 1 more day. 1 more day. It's 1 more day. That monkey that's on your back is a permanent fixture of your personality at this point. And if you're aware, right, having self-awareness of that helps you manage through it.
What's your final message to everyone listening after they heard your story? Whether it's they're struggling or they maybe know someone struggling, what's the final message to the community as a whole? What can we do?
Scare your children. Take them to these funerals that these people are overdosing.
Show them the reality, basically.
Show them.
Tell them. You're not traumatizing. You are traumatizing your kids.
But in a positive way.
But in a positive way. Right? There's still things that I'm traumatized about as a child that I've seen with my parents that I stay away from.
The first time I saw in Russia, they slit the throat of like a sheep. I was like, what's happening? I was 4 years old. I don't think I'll ever forget it. And it stayed with me, not exactly in a negative way, but I learned the importance of kosher and all those things from that one experience. So
Take your kids.
I believe this is one of those traumatizing things that you need to do. I personally speak with my oldest about this all the time. I told him I was coming here tonight. I told him that I was going to do this interview with someone who wanted to share their story because they just want to scream it from the mountaintops at this point, because so many of their peers are dying, and it's been very consistent. I want to say it's almost like we anticipate it now at this point. Like every few months we have another one, and let's not forget the ones that aren't even being really reported to the community. I mean, I have horror stories that I've been told where people will just say that person has moved away for college or whatnot, and they've been buried already.
I've been quiet for far too long. And if I could tell anyone, is that you should have a very open dialogue with your children. Show them. Show them on how fragile this life can be. This life is extremely fragile. You see, my father, he passed when I was young, and he said, there's no such thing as a problem, but if there is, it's the one you cannot fix. And that's permanent. Death, health, sickness. This is a self-inflicted disease, right? You willingly knowing, which makes us human, that will hurt, but we choose to do it anyway. Take your children out of their phones and their iPads and whatever else, and run to every funeral of overdose and sit there and let them see you cry. Let them put that fear in their hearts that this life is not to play with. You have one. While you're dead and rotting and the bugs are eating you, everybody else's life is continuing. Take your kids and expose them. I do. Every chance I get. Not with my son yet, because he's still far too young, but I'm beginning with my daughter.
I want to thank you for sharing your story. I really hope it helps someone, and honestly, it's a story of promise, right? I mean, you've been clean for 9 years. It is possible. When I was doing some fundraising for us to open a center here in the neighborhood, most of the parents that were hesitant to even give money were just kind of like, well, we know that once you're in this problem, that's it, it's over. And I said, that's not true. There are many people that have recovered. They're just too, I guess, scared, or they have too much respect for their family members to try to, to save face. They don't want to come out and just expose like everything personal in their life, because it is very traumatizing for themselves. But a lot of people don't believe that this is possible to get out of, and you are here as a symbol of hope. That not only is it possible, but it's manageable, but it is difficult. And I appreciate you shedding the truth on this, because people, like you said, that's why they relapse. It's just too hard.
It's too hard.
We have to start choosing our hards better. Everything is hard. Being addicted to drugs, I think you'll agree, is hard. And I think it's the hardest thing to be.
It's the hardest thing.
It's the hardest thing.
But you could lead the horse to water, but you cannot force it to drink.
Yeah.
You need to understand that. The person needs to want to stop, and it's supposed to be intertwined with finding something to live for. Give people chances. They deserve it. You'll be surprised on what could be accomplished. Give people chances. I didn't get many, but when I did, I grabbed onto it. It was my last.
I'm really proud of you.
I am too.
Thank you again. And to everyone that was watching, I hope you can grab some kind of semblance from this, that this is affecting everyone. This is affecting your neighbor. This is affecting, maybe the shul that you go to, the woman that you're sitting with on the left, her son is dealing with this. Nobody's talking about it with each other, and everyone that is dealing with it feels alone for that very reason. Talk to each other, talk to your children, open the dialogue, and let's stop this epidemic together. Thank you guys for listening and watching. And thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to the Kaikov Media for organizing this entire event so that we can do this with respect to your privacy. We really appreciate you guys, so thank you.